Prepare for an extraordinary journey through the most fascinating Akashic records ever revealed. The seer Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, has brought to light surprising information about one of Christianity's most enigmatic figures, Mary Magdalene. What you're about to discover will completely transform your understanding of this extraordinary woman and her pivotal role in humanity's spiritual history. Contrary to centuries of misinterpretation, Edgar Cayce revealed in his mediumistic trances that Mary Magdalene was not simply an ordinary follower of Jesus Christ. His readings describe a woman of noble birth, born into a wealthy family in the region of Magdala, on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. She possessed a refined education, something extremely rare for women of that time, and mastered not only Aramaic, but also Greek and Latin. Cayce described her as belonging to an Essene lineage, a spiritual group dedicated to the study of sacred scriptures and advanced mystical practices. Her spiritual preparation began in childhood, when she was identified as a soul with a higher purpose. Records reveal that she was not 7 personified demons, as tradition has mistakenly interpreted, but rather someone who had overcome 7 great spiritual challenges in previous incarnations. Her material wealth was used to finance part of the mission of Jesus and his disciples, providing essential resources for the spread of Christ's message. Cayce emphasized that she was an initiate of the deep spiritual mysteries, specifically prepared to understand and preserve the Master's highest teachings. Cayce's revelations about the encounter between Mary Magdalene and Jesus are deeply moving and go far beyond what is recorded in the canonical Gospels. According to his readings, this encounter was not coincidental, but part of a cosmic plan established even before they both incarnated in that life. Mary Magdalene was going through a profound spiritual crisis when their paths crossed in Capernaum. She had lost faith in traditional teachings and desperately sought answers to existential questions that tormented her soul. When her eyes met Jesus's, something inexplicable happened. She experienced an instant awakening, recognizing in him not only a teacher, but the living manifestation of divine love. Cayce describes how Jesus immediately recognized in her a disciple capable of understanding dimensions of the teaching that others were not yet ready to receive. He called her the beloved disciple in private circles, recognizing her unique ability to penetrate the deepest mysteries of existence. For 3 years, she walked alongside the Master, not only observing his miracles but also understanding the spiritual principles that made them possible. Unlike the other disciples who often doubted or showed fear, Mary Magdalene maintained unwavering faith even in her darkest moments. Can you imagine the courage it took to be a woman and a disciple at that time? If this story touches your heart, please like it and share it with someone who needs to know this truth. Edgar Cayce revealed something absolutely revolutionary. Mary Magdalene was the repository of secret teachings that Jesus did not publicly share with the crowds or even with the 12 main apostles. These teachings involved the nature of the soul, the processes of reincarnation, the spiritual alchemy of inner transformation, and the mysteries of divine creation. According to the readings, Jesus recognized that she possessed the spiritual maturity and intellectual preparation necessary to receive and preserve knowledge that humanity would only be ready to comprehend millennia later. Mary Magdalene learned advanced spiritual healing techniques, methods of raising consciousness through deep meditation, and practices to awaken the body's energy centers that we now know as chakras. Cayce described private sessions where Jesus explained to her the true meanings behind the parables he told the crowds, revealing layers of understanding that transcended literal interpretation. She was instructed in the nature of Christ consciousness, not as something exclusive to Jesus, but as a latent divine potential within every human being, waiting to be awakened. These teachings included knowledge of the universal laws that govern the manifestation of reality, the creative power of thought aligned with divine love, and the cosmic cycles that influence humanity's spiritual evolution. Mary Magdalene meticulously recorded these teachings in texts that were later hidden or destroyed during the early centuries of Christianity. Cayce asserted that fragments of these writings still exist, hidden in undisclosed locations, awaiting the right moment to be rediscovered by humanity. Edgar Cayce's revelations about the events of the crucifixion attribute a far more significant role to Mary Magdalene than tradition recognizes. While the male disciples fled in fear of Roman persecution, she remained at the foot of the cross, radiating love and spiritual strength to Jesus during his physical suffering. Cayce described her as being in a deep meditative state, serving as an energetic anchor that allowed Jesus to maintain the heightened consciousness necessary to fulfill his purpose. She was not simply weeping in despair, but performing conscious spiritual work, sustaining the vibration of unconditional love that neutralized the dense energies of hatred and violence around her. During the hours of agony, Mary Magdalene maintained a telepathic connection with Jesus, receiving his final instructions on how to preserve and disseminate the teachings after his physical departure. Cayce revealed that she was the first person to whom Jesus appeared after the resurrection, not by chance, but because she was the only one capable of understanding and witnessing the true nature of what had occurred. When she encountered him in the garden, Jesus imparted to her final teachings on the immortality of the soul and the continuity of consciousness beyond physical death. He instructed her not to touch him because her body was undergoing a vibrational transformation, transitioning between physical and spiritual dimensions. Mary Magdalene received the sacred mission of being the apostle to the apostles, the one who would bring the news of the resurrection and strengthen the faith of the disciples who had fled. Her courage and unwavering fidelity earned her this extraordinary privilege of being the first witness to the greatest miracle in Christian history. Edgar Cayce provided surprising insights into the life of Mary Magdalene after the events of Pentecost and the dispersion of the apostles. According to his readings, she traveled extensively throughout the Mediterranean world, carrying Jesus' teachings far beyond the borders of Palestine. Contrary to the traditional version that places her in contemplative retreat, Cayce describes her as an active and courageous missionary who constantly faced persecution and danger. She established secret communities of spiritual study in several cities, where she taught both men and women the deepest mysteries she had learned directly from Jesus. These communities practiced spiritual healing, advanced meditation, and studied sacred texts that were later considered heretical by the nascent institutional church. Mary Magdalene may have reached France, as some traditions suggest, but she also traveled to Egypt, where the teachings she carried found fertile ground among the Alexandrian mystics. Cayce revealed that she lived to a ripe old age, approximately 80, maintaining lucidity and spiritual vitality until her final days. Throughout her post-crucifixion life, she worked tirelessly to ensure that the true essence of Jesus' teachings would not be distorted or lost. She discreetly trained other spiritual masters, creating a lineage of knowledge that has survived through the centuries in secret societies and mystical orders. Her final years were dedicated to writing detailed memoirs about her time with Jesus, documents that, according to Cayce, were hidden for protection and await rediscovery. She passed away peacefully, knowing that she had fulfilled her sacred mission to preserve and disseminate the light of Christ for future generations. One of Edgar Cayce's most fascinating contributions was to reveal the previous incarnations of Mary Magdalene, demonstrating her soul's millennia-long preparation for the role she would play alongside Jesus. According to his readings, she had been a priestess initiated into the temples of ancient Egypt during the 18th dynasty, where she mastered the healing arts and the mysteries of Isis. In that life, she already demonstrated an extraordinary ability to channel divine energies to restore physical health and spiritual balance. Cayce described another incarnation in Atlantis, where she was part of the spiritual elite who attempted to preserve sacred knowledge before the final cataclysm that destroyed that civilization. In that life, she learned the devastating consequences of the selfish use of power and knowledge, a lesson that prepared her to humbly serve in the mission with Jesus. In a lifetime in Persia, she served as a spiritual advisor to rulers, learning to navigate the complexities of political power without compromising her spiritual integrity. Each of these incarnations developed specific faculties: keen intuition, courage in the face of adversity, wisdom to discern truth from illusion, and the ability to love unconditionally. Cayce emphasized that the encounter between Mary Magdalene and Jesus was not the first. Their souls had crossed paths in multiple previous existences, developing a profound spiritual connection that transcended time and space. This past life history explains why she was able to instantly recognize the divinity in Jesus, and why she was prepared to receive teachings that others could not yet comprehend. Her soul's millennia-long journey demonstrates that great spiritual missions require extensive preparation through multiple earthly experiences. How do you feel when you discover that your own soul also has a millennia-old history of evolution? Like this revelation if it's expanding your consciousness, and share it so more people can awaken. Edgar Cayce directly addressed the question that fascinates and intrigues millions. What was the true nature of the relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene? His readings reveal a connection that completely transcends conventional categories of human relationships. Cayce described a bond of spiritual soulmates, where the love they shared was the purest expression of divine love manifested between two beings. It was not a relationship based on physical attraction or shared emotional needs, but a union of higher purposes and mutual recognition of intertwined cosmic missions. According to the Revelations, they shared a profound spiritual intimacy that allowed telepathic communication, intuitive understanding of each other's thoughts and feelings, and the ability to work in perfect energetic synchrony. Cayce asserted that Jesus saw in Mary Magdalene the manifestation of the divine feminine principle, the Sophia of the Gnostics, while she recognized in him the full embodiment of the divine masculine principle, the Logos. Together, they represented the sacred unification of complementary polarities necessary to anchor elevated frequencies of Christ consciousness on the earthly plane. As to the possibility that they were married in the conventional sense, Cayce suggested that human categories of marriage did not adequately apply to the kind of union they shared. Theirs was an alchemical marriage of souls, a merging of consciousness at the highest level possible between incarnate beings. This union needed no external rituals to be sacred, because it was sacred in its very essence. Mary Magdalene was, in every truly important sense, Jesus' spiritual companion, the one who understood him most deeply and who was prepared to continue his work after his departure. Edgar Cayce provided disturbing insights into how and why the truth about Mary Magdalene was systematically suppressed over the centuries. According to his readings, in the first centuries after the crucifixion, a deliberate campaign began to minimize the role of women in the early Christian movement. Mary Magdalene, being the most prominent among the female disciples and the holder of secret teachings, became a primary target of this suppression. Leaders of the nascent institutional church, driven by patriarchal cultural prejudices and fear of losing control over the interpretation of the teachings, began to distort her image. The transformation of Mary Magdalene from beloved disciple to repentant prostitute was a deliberate slander perpetrated in the 6th century by Pope Gregory the Great, intentionally confusing her with other Marys mentioned in the Gospels. Cayce revealed that Gospels and texts written by her or about her teachings were considered heretical and destroyed during the councils that established the official biblical canon. The discovery of the Nag Hammadi manuscripts in the 20th century, including the Gospel of Mary, partially confirmed Cayce's revelations about the existence of suppressed texts. These documents depict Mary Magdalene teaching the other disciples, something that Peter jealously questions, highlighting the gender tensions already present in the early community. Cayce predicted that as humanity evolved spiritually and moved away from rigid patriarchal structures, the truth about Mary Magdalene would gradually emerge. He asserted that the recovery of her true story is part of a larger awakening of human consciousness that includes the reintegration and appreciation of the divine feminine principle. The emergence of this truth in the 20th and 21st centuries, through archaeological discoveries, revised historical studies, and renewed interest in Christian mysticism, validates the predictions made by Cayce decades earlier. Edgar Cayce's revelations about Mary Magdalene are not simply historical curiosities, but carry profoundly relevant messages for contemporary humanity. Cayce emphasized that Mary Magdalene's story represents the archetype of the soul awakening to its divine potential through love and dedicated service. Her journey demonstrates that no matter how society labels or limits us, our true spiritual worth lies in the authenticity of our connection with the divine and the courage to live our truth. Mary Magdalene's life teaches that genuine discipleship requires not only faith, but also the courage to stand firm when others shy away, the wisdom to grasp profound truths, and the humility to serve without seeking recognition. Cayce revealed that Mary Magdalene continues to work on the spiritual planes as an ascended master, guiding those who sincerely seek the path to enlightenment. She is especially accessible to women struggling with oppression, unfair judgment, or denial of their spiritual power, offering strength and inspiration. Her story also carries a message about the importance of questioning official narratives and seeking deeper truths beyond superficial appearances. In the current context, where so many female voices still struggle to be heard and valued in spiritual and religious contexts, Mary Magdalene remains a powerful symbol of resistance and authenticity. Cayce asserted that the return of Christ to planetary consciousness, which many await, will be accompanied by a complete rehabilitation of Mary Magdalene's image and recognition of her essential role in the Christ mission. Her story reminds us that the greatest spiritual treasures are often entrusted to those whom society underestimates or marginalizes. Edgar Cayce's revelations about Mary Magdalene invite us to re-examine not only ancient history, but also our own lives and spiritual potential. Each of us carries within us the capacity to be a true disciple, to recognize the Christ within and without, and to serve the awakening of human consciousness. Mary Magdalene's extraordinary journey, from her transformative encounter with Jesus to her dedicated mission after the resurrection, demonstrates that a single soul committed to love and truth can impact eternity. Her lessons of courage, fidelity, wisdom, and unconditional love echo through the millennia, more relevant today than ever. May we honor her legacy not only by studying her story, but by incorporating into our own lives the principles she exemplified. May we have the courage to stand firm in our spiritual truth, even when others doubt or shy away. May we seek the deeper teachings beyond superficial interpretations, and may we love with the intensity and purity that characterized her relationship with the Master. Mary Magdalene awaits in the spiritual realms, ready to assist all those who sincerely seek to walk the path of divine love and spiritual enlightenment.